I call this budget workshop of the Magnolia Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this workshop has been duly called, and that notice of this workshop has been posted in accordance with the Texas Opens Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Ms. Hinkleman, do we have anyone signed up to speak?
Actually, no, we do not, but we're going to go ahead and do pledges first. If we could go ahead and stand and do the U.S. pledge and the Texas pledge.
Perfect.
Well, we want to do the invocation first, or we want to wait until the...
Invocation, yes.
Invocation, okay.
Okay. It's been our tradition to pray before such meetings. If you'd please bow your heads and pray with us. Father God, please bless our community. We are so thankful for all the parents, the teachers, and the students in this community and the support that our school district receives. Please bless them as we head into another wonderful school year. And please put a hedge of protection around our constables who protect our children and teachers while they're at school. In your holy name I pray, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. To the American flag first. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Dr. Morris.
Thank you, sir. And good evening. So there's no school finance bill, so we can go home. Legislature went home, right? All right. So first and foremost, just a quick conversation or discussion about what's going on, or what's not going on, if you will, at the state level. The regular session ended at the end of May, and the legislature did not pass a school finance bill. There is $5 billion in their budget for additional funding for school districts to focus on teacher pay increases. However, right now, we have no bill to fund the money, if you will, okay? Now, obviously there were politics at play as it relates to the vouchers, education savings accounts, and things of that nature, but here we are, okay? So, at the present, we must move forward with building a budget based on current law. And current law basically does not create any additional revenue for us. So we will be going into this coming year without any additional revenue to work with. Our hopes, what we're hearing from some of our legislators and other elected officials, is that there will be a special session called. We've heard September and October, so at some point in time during that time frame, where we hear that they may attempt to address school funding. And during that time, hopefully produce a bill which will increase the funding for us and allowing us to focus on teacher pay raises. It's a very weird year. We've never seen anything quite like this before. I mean, I know Doc's been doing this longer than I have, but in the 22 years that I've been doing this, I mean, there's been times where there's been special sessions called to address one thing or another, and sometimes that's been school finance, but never have we had to wait until after the fiscal year begins for a hopeful school finance bill that will produce additional revenue. So it is a bizarre sort of situation that we're in, but it's the one that we're in, okay? So again, right now, everything is based on current law. So moving forward, like we said before, the revenue per student has not been changed since 2019. So since that time, inflation has gone up approximately 16%. So keep that in mind when we look at current law and the revenue that it produces. the cost of doing business has skyrocketed substantially over the past 4 years, and ultimately, other than new students, we've been provided no additional revenue to respond to that. So, and in addition to that, as it relates to the only mechanism for increasing, under current law, for increasing revenue, that being our additional students, we don't believe that we're at a point yet in our growth where we can confidently anticipate a substantial growth. Right now, the demographer is projecting 300 students for next year. We believe that that's conservative. Our budget is based on a 200 student increase. And basically what that does is that produces enough revenue to sort of close the existing gap, but does not afford any additional money for raises. So at this point, and we'll go into a lot of discussion, guys, so please understand that, you know, I have district recommendations on this slide, that we're on slide 2, so bear with me. Based on current law and in the absence of a new school finance bill, we recommend no raises, given that those are the gift that keeps on giving, in light of the fact that while the money is in their budget, this year feels different. We do not know for certain that they will produce a school finance bill, because it could linger and get hung up with the education savings accounts. There are many rural Republicans in the House that have simply dug in on the no voucher thing, and to the point to suggest that they're okay if there's no new school money, that they're not going to vote yes for it. So I don't know that we've ever seen the legislature quite at odds as they currently are on this, and so we don't feel confident in assuming anything at this point. What we would suggest is that we pause on any sort of consideration as it relates to raises, one-time retention payments, etc., until November. And at that time, what that'll allow us to do is hopefully we will have a new school finance bill, or at least we'll have direction on what the legislature did or didn't do. And also we will be able to have a clearer budget picture at that time as well. So very conservative with our student enrollment increase estimates. 200. Of course, November is after snapshot, so we have a pretty good feel of what the actual enrollment is by that time. And you know, should we hit it out of the park, so to speak, as it relates to enrollment increase, it would afford us additional revenue, even under current law, to consider one-time retention payments or pay raises, etc. Any questions on that? Okay. And then, of course, if the leg produces a school finance bill that produces additional revenue, we would then amend the budget and adopt a new compensation plan, of which I'm going to go over in just a minute, some of the things we looked at. Next, I just want to take a quick look at fund balance and also give a description for some of our newer board members. So the district's fund balance is basically our reserves. At the end of each fiscal year, whatever that number is, basically after all revenue and expenses are received and expended. It functions for a district in several capacities. Number one, to help with cash flow issues at the beginning of each fiscal year. Number two, to respond to emergencies. And number three, it's the number one indicator of a district's financial strength, which is used in bond ratings and things of that nature. So you may have heard of some districts giving raises and adopting deficit budgets to do so. Candidly, we believe that regardless of the district's financial health, that's reckless, because we don't believe at this point that we can assume a school finance bill will pass and those are recurring costs. So if a school finance bill does not pass, we're adopting a deficit budget based on continuing to give raises and recurring costs. Not only will you be behind this year, but you'll be behind in the subsequent year. It may take many years to get out of the hole. So, but some people are using fund balance, and so I want to give you a look at that. So right now, and we have a healthy fund balance. I would certainly say it's not excessive, but it's healthy. We have 98 days of operating expenses in fund balance. Most districts, every district that I've looked at has at least 90 days, okay? There are some other districts that are quite healthier than that, quite honestly. Our approach over the past many years has been that, once we got healthy and we're able to create a solid foundation and 2 bond rating increases and things of that nature, that, we take care of the needs of the district with any surplus that we have every year. We give one-time retention payments, we buy new buses and things of that nature. So, sort of in an effort to make sure that it doesn't give the appearance that we're escrowing taxpayer dollars. If that makes sense. But as it relates to what we have, we're healthy, we're not excessive, we have 98 days. Just FYI, for every $500 one-time payment, it costs us about $1 million, okay? Our board policy states that we will not go below 2.5 months of operating expenses and fund balance. As your CFO, I would recommend not going below 3. So, in the future, once the funding becomes clear, if we're under current law and we have some cushion in the budget, when we're sitting back in here in November, we will have some money where we wouldn't have to dip further into fund balance, potentially, once that funding becomes clear. Now, should we be forced to move forward under current law, and the budget basically is the actual meets the revenue estimates, then we might consider looking at using some of our fund balance at that time, not to go below 90. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So, for cash flow purposes, this is sort of what that looks like. Understand that the wealthier a district is, the less number of state payments you receive for state aid purposes. So we don't receive our first state aid payment until, is it October 25th or November 25th? Kim? I think it's October 25th. So based on that, having reserves is critical because we still have payroll. We still have payroll in September, we have payroll in October, right? So as you're looking at this, you'll see that we did not dip below at any time this year $22 million, and we have $33 million in fund balance. Okay? So now, we had gone ahead and put together some alternate compensation plans with the expectation that a school finance bill would pass. So I want to run some of those by you today, make sure you know that we're not just sitting back, that we are creating a plan in case the money comes, and I think we've been very creative with that. So, HB 100 was the bill that did see the light of day but was not voted on in the regular session. That bill would have produced an extra $5.5 million for us, okay? So, we built some scenarios to share with you in the case that the funding comes through that we believe are competitive in nature. Sort of a what-if scenario with hopes. So what would let me go back a little bit. What would the $5 billion do? And we talked about HB 100 and how it would produce an extra $5.5 million for us. One of the groups that we follow, the Equity Center, did a scenario the other day and assumed that they took the entire $5 billion and simply increased the basic allotment, which is the primary funding component. If they were to do that, and they did it in 1 year, it would produce an extra $10 million for us. That's how much money that they have in the budget to spend on public ed. So as we look at compensation plans, you know, this is sort of what we've heard from you guys, that obviously we want to focus our dollars, if or when the money is available, on teacher pay, closing our pay gaps, focusing on our veteran teachers, and creating some sort of loyalty feature as well. All we need is the money. So before we get into some of the numbers, I know we often talk and have concerns of teachers leaving our district, you know, for potentially more pay at some of our neighboring districts, et cetera. I wanted to show a few slides that I thought that might be of interest to you all. So this first one here tells a story, and thanks to Ms. Weatherby for these reports as well. It tells a story of teacher turnover. So when the question arises, when a teacher leaves the district, where is that teacher going? And so as you look at this, this shows the last 5 years of where teachers went when they left our district. Primarily, you can focus on the red and the blue, whereas the red are no longer a teacher in Texas, which suggests that they either quit the profession altogether or they're teaching in another state. And I think the interesting thing with this one, if you look pre-COVID, 5 years ago, that number was only 40%, and this past year was almost 55%, which suggests that folks are leaving the profession in record numbers, which is alarming, of course. But of the teachers who left the district last year, 32% went to teach in another district in Texas. Okay. Now, delving a little bit deeper into that data, where did our teachers go when they left here? To sort of compare or contrast, are they leaving for the money, or what is the primary reason? And then I got on the next slide show you where they're coming from. So I think the most interesting thing here, this shows a picture of the last 5 years. If you look at Conroe ISD, we lost 57 teachers to Conroe ISD over the past 5 years. I don't know if that's a surprise to anyone. Then Tomball is second at 26. Okay? All those other ones at the top mostly are Region 4 districts that do pay better. There's no doubt about it. But the next slide is interesting as well. So where are our teachers going? So if you remember on the previous slide, we received 57 teachers from Conroe ISD over the last 5 years. Or I'm sorry, the 57 went to Conroe ISD, and on this slide, we received 51 for Conroe ISD. And if you look at Tomball, the number is exactly the same. So we've lost 26 teachers to Tomball ISD, and we've gained 26 teachers. So no one in particular in my world, you know, the finance guy, would ever say that money does not matter, because it does, and we know that. I think what this does suggest is that we've been competitive enough to draw some folks over, and we're also, you know, sort of beat our chest sometimes at the culture that we provide and things of that nature. Is that interesting? Yes. All right. Good. I thought it was.
We should just get somewhere in the middle and swap teachers. You know,
We'll take your.
have a
I
little
will
bidding
say.
deal or something, you
I
know.
will say this: the average years of experience for a teacher leaving MISD is between 11 and 12 years of experience. And when you talk with our C&I folks, that's concerning, because that's usually at a level where, you know, you want to hang on to your folks. So.
Do you have the same staff for teachers that are hired? What the average hire?
I can get that, Jay. I can get that. That was not part of the first one. It'd be interesting, yes, sir.
See if it's the
We may be
same.
losing because there's a gap in existing pay at that level, and then getting some of their younger ones in. So yeah, that would be interesting as well. Okay, so in looking at pay and how we compare to other districts for teacher pay purposes, this first slide here, for whatever it's worth, it compares us to all districts in the state of Texas. Obviously, We know that there are a lot of tiny districts throughout the state. And so it makes sense that we would be paying much higher in the area that we live in because of our size district. But I think it's good to know. So you look on the right there and you'll see how we compare. And we're very, very competitive on the front end of the teacher pay scale. And then you see that it starts getting a little bit closer as we move down for the more experienced teachers. The next slide will be a little more telling because this is sort of our peer group. This is Conroe ISD, Montgomery ISD, Tomball ISD, Waller, and Willis as it compares to us. So again, you can see that we're below in pretty much every area. I wouldn't pay any attention to that one part that says highest salary. That's based on data entry and approach, so I wouldn't pay much attention to that. But you can see at 0-year teacher pay, we're at 98% of this group, which is competitive. But as you move down, we're at 93% at year 10. And again, we talked about the average years of experience of a teacher exiting the district is between 11 and 12. So as we look at these numbers, I mean, we know where the focus is needed. We know that when money is available, we need to be very intentional with our approach over a multi-year basis to try to add money to the end and the middle of the scale to be more competitive. But keep in mind, 26 and 26 for Tomball. Again, as a reminder of sort of what we've heard from our board, teacher pay, closing pay gaps, focusing money on our veteran teachers, and MIC loyalty. So let's look into some of the numbers of what we could do when we have money. So dissecting, let me start at the top. This is how much it costs for every percentage raise. It costs a little over $1 million. And you see the breakdown based on employee category. For teachers and all others on the teacher pay scale, it's $770,000. Move down the list to see our hourly and then our other non-teaching professionals. So in order to get an idea of what we could do to be creative and strategic and intentional with raises and focusing on the middle of the scale and the upper end of the scale, sort of delved into the number of teachers and the actual budgetary cost within each one of those categories, 0 to 5, 6 to 10, etc. You can see on the left-hand side of the screen just how many teachers that we have with 10 or less years of experience. We have 430 teachers and other professionals on the teacher pay scale with 0 to 5 years of experience, 304 from 6 to 10, and then you can see how it continues down. So, good news, bad news as it relates to that. The good news is, as we look at the cost to do something for those middle and end groups, it doesn't cost that much money to address those different layers because there's simply not a lot of folks, comparatively speaking, in those areas. Okay? So what I've broken down there is the cost of that $770,000 per percent at each of those categories. Then let's go back to the assumption of HB 100, which produced $5.5 million. We do not know what our number will or would be at this time, but based on the only bill that we saw during the regular session, producing an extra $5.5 million and being strategic with what we would do with the raises, you can see that we could use multiple approaches to spend that money. And if that money was available today, what we would recommend to the board tonight would be scenario C, where we're giving a 4% raise to teachers with 0 to 5 years of experience, 5% for 6 to 10, 6% raises for teachers 11 to 15 years of experience, 7% for 16 to 20, and then 8% raises for those with 21 more years of experience. We believe that doing this and doing it very intentional over the next several years, if the money is available, would help ultimately start closing that gap in the middle. And so So again, I think we'd be very strategic, and I think it sends a message to our folks as well, that we take care of our veteran teachers. And so, any questions on that? Again, I know we're doing what-if scenarios, which could be fruitless, but I think it's a good plan, guys, and when we come back, and hopefully if there's a school finance bill at some point that produces substantial revenue, I mean, we'll be ready at that point in time. Okay. So here's sort of what that would look like if it went into effect. You can look down closer to the bottom of the scale at, sort of 20 plus in particular, and you can see that you're starting to create some substance there when you're going on step 20 year over year versus 64K versus 68K. Okay. Okay. Now, we sometimes say that Dr. Stevens doesn't just think outside the box, he created the box. So stay with me on this. So what we wanted to do was try to create some mechanism to award or reward, if you will, MISD loyalty without breaking the bank. Okay? So we look at the teacher pay scale and we take into consideration when teachers retire. Okay, right now, there are 4 different tiers for TRS retirement purposes. We have chosen to focus on tier 3, which will be the vast majority of our current employees, 3 and 4, okay? But in an effort to not have to wait until 62, we focused on 3. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute. So what that means is that a person must, in order to have normal age retirement and draw full retirement, a teacher must be 60 years of age and meet the rule of 80. Rule of 80 is your age plus your years of experience. Okay? So in identifying that, we set a parameter of who would qualify for this alternate loyalty pay system. Those with 34 or more years of experience, and some threshold locally. Right now, we've put in 10 years or more of MISD teaching experience. Okay? So what would that look like? Potentially, and this is a first go with this, so please keep that in mind. So as you look at the very small numbers on the left of the page, we had to include some assumptions with this scenario. We assumed that a teacher starts at 22 years of experience. Excuse me, the age of 22. Okay? And then you can see the number of teachers in the fourth column that we have at each level of experience. So as you go down the page, basically we've identified, and again, that age 60 as our target. Okay? So what we did was we worked backwards 5 years, because those people who retire in that category, their pay at retirement will be based on their average best 5 years of experience. Okay? So as you work backwards on this, we started at step 38 for the number of teachers, or excuse me, for the years of experience. You work back, and you can see that it works back to basically a teacher going from step 33 to step 34. So what would happen in this scenario is that, for any teacher who is entering 34 or more years of experience next year, and of which 10 or more years are with MISD, you would then go to the MISD teacher loyalty scale as opposed to the regular scale. Okay? So you look down to the right over here and you'll see that we've created a substantial amount of pay disparity for those teachers. Or instead of making $83,000 at year 35, you would be making $97,400. So, now, there's good news and bad news with this. The good news is, like we talked earlier, it does not break the budget because it does not affect currently a lot of folks. But We believe that it helps from a loyalty perspective, potentially. It's a way to reward them, and perhaps, you know, it might get some of those folks who are at the 15-year level to take a peek at what it would mean for them at retirement. So let me show you what that means for retirement purposes for these teachers. So in these scenarios, based on scale A, a teacher retired, their yearly pay would be $83,000 average. Multiplied by the TRS multiplier 2.3 times, their monthly take home would be $6,142. Based on our loyalty scale, the average pay would go to $96,000. Monthly income would go to $7,083, which means for the remainder of the retiring teacher's life, the MISD loyalty pay would benefit he or she by nearly $1,000 per month. And because of the limited number of folks in that category at present, which will change year over year, the cost of the district is only about $100,000, at least in year one. And you would never have, generally speaking, you wouldn't anticipate, you know, anywhere, any substance of 25 to 30 teachers entering that at one time. So it would be incremental in nature. That's outside the box. Any questions? I mean, comments?
Did you look at that to see what would be coming, teacher-wise? So that's those numbers?
Yes.
Number
yes,
of
we did
teachers,
look
so.
at that. We did to produce the 100,000. I didn't include it on here, Chuck, but yes, the answer is yes. We have 11 folks in that category, and I believe it was either 7 or 8 who would qualify based on years at MISD.
Yeah, I would like to see a schedule where we see the growth or the
Right.
expected growth for the next 10 years or
Right.
15 years to that.
Okay, we can do that. We have time, thanks to the
Yeah.
legislation. Okay, I can do that. Property values, tax rates, et cetera. The legislature did manage to pass a couple of bills associated with property taxes. Senate Bill 2 compresses the M&O rate by an additional 10.7 cents, nice round figure there. And it increases the homestead exemption from 40,000 to 100,000, okay? So what does that look like for us? Well, before I get to the tax rate, let me show you the property values and estimates that we received from the appraisal district. You can see that the appraisal estimate is going up $1.9 billion this coming year. As you look at this, a couple things to note. I mean, over the last 10 years, the property values have basically tripled, just shy of tripling. And over the past 5 years, they've basically doubled. But as we know with the current school funding system, that does not produce any additional revenue for the district for general operating purposes, unfortunately. So what does that look like for us tax rate wise? Right now, based on the information that we have, it would drop our total tax rate, assuming the same on the INS side, down from $1.14 to 96 cents total. So just as a reminder, this goes back a few years, but in the 05-06 school year, our total tax rate was $1.79. And this would take it under $1. And we know the state has the money to fund this at the present. Our concern is the future, candidly.
Do we think we're gonna be able to compress that for this, that they'll be able to compute that and we do it for October and get that,
Yes, sir. I think we're good to go. I mean, I looked at the bill today. Basically, the state aid template compresses it based on current law, and the information that we received from the Equity Center and what I read said an extra 10.7 cents beyond that. So I do, well, I mean, I guess the governor has to sign it to go back to your point, but yes, I would hope or anticipate that we can get that done in a normal time frame.
the homestead though, is
Required
relying
vote.
on a constitutional amendment. And so we won't be able to get that until,
Well, it'll be on the November ballot, but supposedly, and I don't remember, I talked with TASBO, or it was either TASBO or TEA recently, and they told us that we would be moving forward with our tax rate calculations, assuming the passage. It's interesting, that's what they told us.
because the constitutional amendment has to do with the fact that they are breaking their amount that they're able to spend within a biennium.
Yes, sir.
So it's to allow them to spend the additional dollars to get the
That's
tax
probably the
credit.
same thing that we were talking about with the retired teacher deal.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Okay. And so what's next, guys? We're supposed to receive our certified property values on July 25th. We're hoping there'll be another legislative session, but we're hearing it will not take place until the teachers are back at work. Our regular board meeting on August 14th, and then we'll have our public hearing on August 28th and a special meeting to adopt the budget that night. And I believe that is all I have for budget workshop purposes. You know, guys, I mean, I think we've developed a good plan, or at least some things that we can work if a school funding bill is on the forefront and it produces additional revenue. We know whatever the increase in revenue that we have to spend 50% of it in all likelihood on teacher pay raises, which is not a problem because that's where we spend our money anyhow. And so we're hopeful. And again, if we're under current law requirements, we'll take a look at the budget in November and make a decision on what we can afford. Any other questions? I know it's a lot of info for a what-if scenario, but I feel like we're ready to rock if money comes our way.
Have the teachers been,
So obviously, the effect of this, and is gonna be, the issue with our teachers, and it's sort of all over the board around state of Texas. I mean, there are those, our neighbor Tomball, jumped out there and produced a $6 million.
Yeah, I think their average pay increase was around 5% for teachers, but it's a multi-million-dollar deficit.
Yeah.
Dallas ISD did something similar, and they've got a $45 million deficit. We have others such as Conroe, Willis, and Montgomery, I think did something very small, but they're doing the same as us.
So it will be the burden on us, administrative side of it, to communicate to our teachers that, we have looked at it up and down. Obviously, one of the number one, goals of this board is to take care of our teachers and with salaries or other things, but also to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible with the dollars, in this case, that we're not receiving. And at some point say that, we're gonna watch very carefully what happens in the next coming months. Then, as Eric said, those dollars
That's the
are in the
thing,
budget,
dollars are
but
there.
whether they'll ever pass them along to us will yet to be seen. And so, but to let them know that it is the intention of the board that as soon as those dollars show up, that we can turn back around, we can put them in salary, and that we'll have a process that will allow that to catch them back up to the new compensation plan that we'll adopt at that point. So that at least it can affect their TRS or whatever happens within that. We may be directed to give specific
We
pay
have no
raises
idea
at
what
certain
the
times.
language is going to be.
Yeah,
So-
there's been talk of some of that, and so we'll just have to wait and see. But that we will direct that will come back to the teachers at that point, just as soon as we have those funds available. So,
And we're putting it squarely on the legislature.
Do we have a theory as to why these districts are willing to take a deficit approach? Do they think that it's going to happen?
I
or-
think that it depends on the district, Jay. I mean, some of them have more cushion, if you will. Tomball ISD has a massive fund balance. But again, in lieu of a bill, I mean, you're still taking a risk. So I think, yes, the vast majority of them, whether they come out and say it or not, are anticipating something coming from the state. We just believe that is a little risky, given that this feels different than it ever has. And the timing, of course, is terrible, but. Dr. Mom?
How many times have y'all ever started a school year without knowing your funding?
Well, we've had some times, as Eric talked about, that they've been up in the air, but the special session was ongoing in the summer, and we got directives about this time. This is the first time I remember when we've ever said that we're not going to make a decision until, October or whenever, but.
Yeah, we heard from one of Colcourt's assistants that they were going to start around September 12th. And then Dan Patrick said October, so we're not sure at this point.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you all. I mean, again, we're prepared when funding is clear, but it's been a struggle this year with all of this, but we'll be ready. So thank you all.
Anything else? All right. Well, I need a motion that we adjourn this workshop. Motion by Chuck, second by Jay. All in favor? All right.